What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Launchpad podcast, where we talk about your story, your strength, and your assignment. Today, we have a very, very deep topic on today. Some people call it deep, some people won't. But for me, it took me a long time to get to the point to even share this. We're going to talk about my story, my strength, and my assignment. And just like everyone else, we always filter it and we talk about it through the 4 pillars of health, which is mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. We're going to talk about PTSD. Why talk about PTSD? Why not talk about PTSD? Well, I'll just start with one question. Have you ever felt like helpless and terrified all at the same time? See, I know I have, and I've masked it very well. There was a period of time in my life where I was helping everyone else, but I needed the help for myself. As a matter of fact, let me tell you that I was doing a lot of great things, making a lot of great accomplishments. But while I was doing that, I was also hurting. While I was learning, while I was living with PTSD, I was married. I was a minister at my church. I became an elder at my church. I became a Department of Defense photography instructor, meaning that I had Air Force, Army, Navy, and Marines, even Coast Guard. My son was born. I completed the United States Army Drill Sergeant School with the Leadership Award for my class. I was promoted all the way up to Staff Sergeant. I was even promoted to Sergeant First Class. That's when I ran the Fort Jackson Army 10 miler, and I was on a team. I also ran my first marathon. I had graduated over 300 soldiers from basic training at this point. I became a senior drill sergeant of my platoon. I was the sexual harassment, assault, and rape prevention leader. I was the UPL, unit prevention leader, or as the big Army say, the urinalysis guy. And that entailed making sure that the chain of custody, when it comes to testing of urine and things like that if there are any drugs in there, then I was all responsible for it. All it is while being tormented in my mind to the point where it actually spilled over into my job. And that was the sucky part. So one day as a Sergeant First Class, I missed my staff duty shift. And if you know what staff duty shift is, it's a 24-hour shift. And from there, I got cussed out. I'm talking about royally cussed out by my first sergeant at the time. When I say this man called me everything under the sun, it could have been on a sitcom or a movie where, hey, he tore me a new butthole. He told me I was acting like an effing private. For those of you all don't know what a private is, it's the first rank you have when you come into the Army. So I was acting like, I was new, like I didn't know. But anyway, a lot of stuff that he said was true because I did let my battle buddy down. I didn't have a fail stop in place. But the other stuff, all the adjectives, maybe not so much. Actually, they were not true, those things. But it took that moment for me to actually go get help. That was the first time in my life where I actually went and got professional help for the trauma that I experienced over the years in the military. I made my first behavioral health appointment. It was either that or let it reflect on my annual counseling. So I was put in between a rock and a hard place. One is break your pride, go get help, or let it show up on your eval. And I wasn't going to let that happen to me, not at that point in my career. But that was probably the best thing that first sergeant did for me. He made me look at myself in the mirror and figure out why I was slipping or why was emotional and mental things falling over or spilling over into the job. And I was blessed because, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke. So what I had really wasn't exacerbated, but I still dealt with it in silence. And, here it is. Those things that you deal with in silence, they will deal with you. I can't dictate when things will spill over. I just know that the feelings that I had and the emotions that I was feeling were not good. They weren't good for my family. So I really want to thank my commander and first sergeant and my senior drill sergeant at the time for, encouraging me to go see behavioral health because they couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. And that's when I really figured out what was going on, when I went to behavioral health. Fast forward, here I am, 2026. And that happened back in my first time going to behavioral health was back in 2010, if I remember correctly. But I decided after a while, this has really been plaguing me because I normally look outward, but I've been looking inward for so long. I really didn't want to share any of my story or any of my feelings dealing with PTSD because it ranges, for different people. But for me, I was actually scared and afraid to share because I was going against one of the first things that I learned in counseling was don't compare your trauma to somebody else's because your trauma is your trauma. And I was holding back on sharing this because I felt like I regressed and I didn't want to compare my trauma to anybody else's. So with all of that being said, here I am. I'm sharing because I care. I'm sharing because it's going to be therapeutic for somebody I know who's going to be listening. And it's also therapeutic for me. Whenever you do something and it stays in the dark, that's when things start to fester and it starts to grow. So I will expose it to light and I will expose it to what it deserves, the truth. The truth is when you share and when you not only share, but you're really transparent and share, that's when healing takes place. So it took me months, like I said, to just even get to this point. I actually started, it was so funny. I was laying in the bed one day and then I was thinking about sharing and then I said, no. Then I thought about it again. Then I got up and I said, let me just type out a few things. And it went from typing out a few things to sharing my heart with myself. And at that point, I just knew that I had to share it with everybody else. There were moments throughout this journey, my wife will remember this for sure, that we would like walk in the mall and I would just be like, in my head, I was like, man, I want somebody to push me right now. Like I had these moments where I felt like my family was threatened, even though we weren't. And it was just crazy because I just felt like I wish somebody would push me. I want somebody to try me today. And that was like the inside. It was like something on the inside just wanting my button to be pushed just so I can explode. And I knew at that point it really wasn't good. So I was so glad that I had an opportunity to mess up at work and that will push me to go get help. I remember talking to my therapist and he had me do this exercise to help me focus and calm my thoughts. Now, these thoughts came from a different place. These thoughts came from a place of healing. These thoughts came from a place of torment. But the thoughts that really plagued me were, I felt like I was just going to die. And a lot of the times I felt like I was going to die in my sleep. So just imagine feeling like you're going to die in your sleep. Sleep was not fun at times. But when I would sleep, I would sleep well. But then again, I can't count the moments where I wouldn't sleep well. And I kind of found out that it came from me being in different military environments. The one that I would say often was the most apparent was when we were getting hit or Scud missiles were being shot overhead when we were getting ready to go into Iraq. Not only that, but when I was in Bosnia, this was like in year 2000, I saw mass grave sites and I was a forensic photographer. So that means I had to help excavate and I had to take photography. Now, this is like one of the most gory sights I've ever seen in my life. It was almost like looking at a movie. And I remember watching movies where you would see like someone who was dead and the flesh was halfway still on their body, but you can see their hair. And the craziest scene that I remember was it was a child being protected by a mom, and her arm was around the baby, and they were like in this fetal position. And I saw two skeletal remains with hair on it, some flesh, flesh still on it, some not. And it was crazy, but the smell I would never, ever, 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 ever forget. And at the time we were doing this excavation and recovering and taking pictures. At least I was, because I was the only combat photographer on that assignment at the time. And I remember the 92 mics. They were mortuary affairs specialists. They had us, we were wearing masks, but we would put Vicks vapor rub up under our nose, and to kind of like simmer down, or to make that smell be a bit more bearable. And I didn't know that years later, that every time I would smell Vicks vapor rub or any type of like menthol, that I would literally see, as if it's right in front of me, I would see these dead bodies. And trust me, it wasn't like 5 or 6 dead bodies. It was a lot. It was like the part that we uncovered was close to 100, which was crazy. And then the other thing was, I remember when I was in Kuwait, and the first time a Scud attack happened, I was leaving the chow hall, and I had my protective mask, because at that time, lethal gas was a threat. And I remember the sirens going off, and I'm leaving the chow hall, and then the only thing you hear was boom, the sirens going off, and you hear just explosions going off overhead. So everybody, we're just running. We're running like full speed to get to these bunkers. Meanwhile, only thing you hear is clank, 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 clank. And you see, pro mask, everybody trying to grab their pro mask, protective mask, gas mask, and atropine falling out. And I get into the bunker, and I'm like, yo, I don't have my atropine. So I'm hoping that no gas is actually hitting the actual camp that we're at, because we're going to be screwed. But I wasn't the only one. I looked back, and it was like stuff everywhere. Some people were walking out with plates. They dropped their plates. We hot-tailed it, and we ran straight to those bunkers. But anyway, I said all of that to say that those are some experiences I don't mind sharing, because over the years and through counseling, I've been able to, see those things as it just happened. And not only it just happened, but I'm healing from those things, and it's not as much of a burden. Anyway, I went to school for psychology, so I'm familiar with CBT, which is cognitive behavior therapy, which is a short-term, goal-oriented form of psychology and psychotherapy that kind of connects your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. It helps people like me or anybody to spot unhelpful or stinking thinking and different patterns, and help you change your daily behaviors so that you can feel better. I remember specifically going to my therapist, and he had me do some of these exercises. This one particular exercise was the most helpful. He told me to go sit in darkness, because darkness was like my issue, and get comfortable with being in the dark. And I took the challenge head on, because I wanted to heal. I was ready to become free. So honestly, I was excited about doing it. But even though I was excited, I was also kind of scared to do it. But anyway, I took the challenge head on. So I sat and I explored the darkness. And I allowed any thought to come to me. And the crazy part is, I felt like I was a young kid, like really sitting in a dark basement. And I don't know, if you ever grew up with in the basement, well, I don't know. I don't know if you grew up with a house with the basement, but going in the basement as a kid is kind of scary. You know what I mean? Especially when it's cool down there and you feel that moisture, it feels dungeon-like, but you actually living in the city. You know what I mean? So I had to sit there and allow any thought to come to me and just embrace whatever it was. So I did that. I had thoughts and feelings of irritation. I had thoughts of kind of horror. But one thing he told me was just embrace the moment, sit in the feeling, and know that it's gonna pass. It might pop up, but it can be fleeting. And one thing that I learned from that was that thought was not a reality. Even though I knew it wasn't a reality, I would oftentimes flee or run away from the thought. That's why I wouldn't have to deal with it. And it became bad. It became bad. I used to wake up in a cold sweat. My wife would say everything is, ask me, was everything all right? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm good. I'm cool. Knowing I'm not cool. Lying. Just lying. It's crazy when you tell people to tell the truth and then you won't go get help and tell the truth, for yourself. But that's just where I was at. And I think, we all deal with that, just being human. I remember laying down sometimes and it feel like my heart would like jump through my chest. But things got real bad when my nightmares became daymares. It was really crazy when I was driving one day and I looked and I was having the same bodily reaction to the nightmares, but I was in the daytime. That was crazy. I would say my most horrible experience was, not to get too graphic, and I'm not going to get graphic, was one day I was in the shower and I was washing up, and as if someone was standing right in front of me. It was like darkness was in the shower with me. And my heart started beating so fast that I couldn't really breathe correctly. I know I could breathe because I was standing up, but I had to grasp the wall or put my hand on the wall, and I couldn't do nothing but bend over and breathe. And I just told myself, just breathe. So I started doing some breathing exercises, and it didn't go away right away. And I was like, nah, man. I said, I can't believe this is happening. Almost to the point where I just wanted to scream out loud. And I was just like this thing just came and I was like, ah. And it was crazy because it was almost uncontrollable, but I was trying to control it. But it was to the point where I had to let this thing out, this feeling. And as I let it out, then I could see my breathing started to calm down a little bit. And that's when I stopped feeling dizzy. I stopped feeling like I had vertigo. And like, it went from double vision to single vision to like, man, I can't believe this is happening. To the point where I was at a loss. I would just say it like that. I was at a loss. And that was just something I had to share, because if you had this feeling, or if you ever run into this feeling, know that it will pass. But know that you have to embrace knowing that things are going to change and that feeling would not be there forever. And you have to open up and you have to share. You got to have somebody to talk to, because if not, fear is an incubator and it can lead to death. People have strokes, heart attacks, they have bouts of rage. I'm encouraging anyone who is listening to this and you have had any of those same symptoms or that same experience to literally stop what you're doing and just pick up the phone and call and get some professional help. I've had personal help throughout the years, but like I say, it spilled over into the job where I didn't only need that personal help, but I needed professional help. So getting professional help helped me to actually not put that pressure on my wife, even though she was there for me. I didn't want to trigger her because, that's just, I think that's just what men do. Or maybe just people who care. I think that's just what we do. We don't want to take our stress and put it on other people, but therefore we become burdened. But I've discovered that community is the best thing for burdens. I can do 1,000 pounds, but I can't do 1,000 pounds at one time. And if I had a lot of people, many hands make for light work. So I'd rather have a lot of people helping me carry that weight and then me also helping others carry their weight than me just do it all alone. I was doing it all alone for a while, but it comes up to a point where you just cannot do it on your own. And when that time comes, I hope it's not as embarrassing for you as it was for me, but know that the best answer is an honest answer. And I've learned that over the years. An honest answer can keep you from regret. I struggled to give an honest answer because I personally did not allow my community at that time to support me with my weakness. I would support others in their weakness, but I made no space or no room for myself to be helped. And that's hypocritical. That's exactly what it is. I'm no expert, but I know that not allowing your community to help you carry your burden could lead to self-deletion, where you continue to struggle. But, there's help in community. So reach out, and I'm telling you, community is the best thing for your troubles. I've had plenty of nights where I said over and over to God, you have not given me a spirit of fear, but one of love, one of a power, and one of a sound mind. But I did not even feel like doing it. Sometimes you have to remind yourself, and you have to put in practice to do the thing that you don't feel like doing. You got to declare to yourself. You got to remind yourself, and remember that the worst feeling that I've ever experienced, I don't want to experience that again. It's bad when nightmares, again, like I tell you, when nightmares become daymares, it is a bad thing, brother. And you need to go ahead and reach out for help. Now that I let my community help me out, I've learned how to mitigate those occurrences of those triggering events, allow me to lose my breath. Like I said, I had to blink a couple of times in the shower while I was wide awake, make myself calm my breathing down just to come to myself. That's why I'm talking about, and I preach the 4 pillars of health: mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. We have different components, but we are one being. You know what I mean? So we have to live like we are one being. So I can't, physically exist without having emotions. I can't have emotions without having a spiritual sense of what's going on. I can't have a spiritual sense of what's going on without it affecting my mental state, my cognitive processes, the way that I think. So that's why it's important that if you are dealing with PTSD, or you have dealt with it and it continues to be a present part of your life, like it is a present part of my life, trust me, you can make it so that it's present, but it doesn't take over your life. Things that I remember, man, this stuff for me, the initial stuff started over like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, as a matter of fact. We're living in 2026, and I remember this was in Bosnia in 2000. So what therapy has taught me is that there is safety when you have good wisdom surrounding you. For those people who are so spiritual and you're so deep, God has blessed people to give techniques and behavioral things to help us deal and manage with the things that we encounter in life. So that's why I love, I wanted myself, early on, I wanted to become a psychologist so I can help counsel people, because I just like helping people. But I didn't know how much help that psychologists, and counselors, and therapists give you until I was faced with it. I also have to say this for a clarifying note, that I'm not in that class of people who think that if you take medication or if you go talk to a therapist that you are off your rockers, or you're crazy and you will never get right. No, God has blessed people. Just like God has blessed the optometrist to give us prescriptions for eyeglasses, He has blessed doctors to help our bodies come into regulation. He's helped counselors and therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists to help our minds and our thoughts become regulated. And then you can live in that place of healing. Healing can take place, but like I said, you have to be an advocate for your own peace. You have to be an advocate for that healing. Here it is. It's real simple. When you have a healthy body, it contributes to a healthy mind. When you have a healthy mind, it contributes to healthy emotions. When you have healthy emotions, it contributes to your spiritual understanding. Your spirit is the one that keeps you alive. I don't know if you ever heard that they gave up the ghost, or when the spirit of a man leaves, then his body is just there and he's dead. So it's important that your spiritual pillar is not the most neglected pillar, which a lot of people actually neglect their spiritual pillar, because they feel like they have to follow a set of rules instead of having a relationship with the one that created them. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. And that's where I feel that my strength was at. But it took something natural, like me getting embarrassed and my body reacting to that embarrassment to actually go get help. But know that it's all for your good. You know what I mean? Whether you fall on your face 5 or 6 times, it doesn't matter. What matters is how many times you get back up. And that's the most important thing. You're going to be more judgmental of yourself than other people are going to be. I've experienced that. One of the craziest things that I learned about myself was I've trained myself how to stay in the loop or stay in the cycle of trauma. And that's crazy to me, because it's almost like when you know better, you should do better. Or you know so much that you can also be blinded by what you think you know. And that's why it's important for somebody else to look at it from an outside view. When you're driving, it's important to understand that you have blind spots. And if you don't know that you have blind spots, or if you drive as if you don't have blind spots, one small turn going from one lane to another, or just doing something that you thought was fully okay, it would be a tragedy. And I've learned that, help is essential. And I guess that would be the theme for what I'm just trying to say right now. Stop trying to do it on your own. I'm telling you, pride it can be a monster. Not pride in you feeling good about something, but the pride that comes before destruction, that you won't let people know you have help. The craziest thing that I found out that I was doing was I was training myself to stay in a loop of trauma. And I did that by not allowing myself to explore feelings, understand that the feelings will pass, but it's almost like going to rehearsal. Some people go choir rehearsal. Some people say dance rehearsal. I remember me growing up in the city. We used to jit all the time. Me and my friends, we'd have a routine. We would rehearse that routine. Look at the Temptations. They would rehearse routines. New Edition, all of these groups, anything you practice the most, you get good at it, So if you practice these dance moves, if you practice staying in this loop of trauma, you will be so good at it that you will think that you are supposed to stay in the loop. That's why when you look on TV, you'll see, these old groups, dance routines or moves that they learned when they were teenagers or in their early 20s. They're now 50, 60, 70 years old, and they haven't missed a beat. It's because they rehearsed it so much. And I saw that I rehearsed running from these triggers. One thing that I learned in therapy was I need to now reprogram triggers. I need to rehearse and practice in my behavior how to react to certain things. I don't know if you know this, the strongest learning is audio or musical learning. That's why when people have dementia or they're trying, someone has a stroke, they can get their speech back by singing. People who have memory loss, or like I say, going through different stages of dementia, they can hear a song from their childhood or a song that was very emotional to them, and they can pick up where the words were. So when I hear certain things, I know that I need to now reprogram or rename, retitle, or give a different connotation to that same thing. Same thing with triggers. Our brains are so amazing. We create synapses from new material. Whatever we rehearse the most, they have the most stickiness. It's almost like taking a rope, tying it together. The more braids or the more threads in a braid, the stronger that thing is. So I had to learn that instead of running away from those triggers, I had to reassign or reprogram those triggers. And I had to do things that was uncomfortable for me. One thing that I do all the time, I started doing this a few years ago, and it came upon recommendation by a counselor that I had. He basically told me one thing, and me being a person who could, leverage common sense, if it works in one area, it works in another area. So I took some of those same behaviors and exercises. So now when I'm in public places, guess what I stopped doing? I stopped sitting in the place of dominance on purpose. I started sitting with my back to the door so that when I hear a door open, that I can still be calm and still be cool, and knowing that I'm going to react how I need to react. And I don't make myself do this so often that when I do sit in a different location or a place of, that's not considered dominance, I'm not triggered. I'm not uncomfortable. I'm not thinking about something else. And this has paid big dividends in my life. I remember my sister, my little sister, she took me out to dinner. Thank you. Thank you for taking me out to dinner. And when we went to dinner, I let her take her seat, and she happened to sit in a place of security or dominance or control position. And I was like, you know what? My mistake. And she had no idea what I was talking about. I said, we're going to switch seats. I'm going to sit over there and you're going to sit right here. And we're just going to talk. We're going to enjoy ourselves. And at the time, she didn't even ask me why. But later on, she asked me, why did I switch seats? I said, because I'm learning how to reprogram myself and know that I have all the goods it takes to always be in a place of dominance. Because guess what? I'm going to react when that time comes on how I need to react. Some people say it's a split-second decision, but guess what? There are enough factors or elements that goes into an equation where if I didn't react within a split second, I have a few milliseconds after the split second to react, and I'm going to be okay. And I started doing this in other positions and in other cases where now sitting in the dark is not so uncomfortable. Now sharing my feelings with other people that I can trust is not as uncomfortable. Now I learned that it's their job. It's their assignment to help me. As much as I always wanted to help other people and I put myself in that position, I'm now in a position where I willingly allow other people to help me. And it's so vulnerable. You learn that as you get older, you find out how much control you don't have over life. And when you can hand it over to people who are responsible with you or to people that you can trust, you find out that you have more freedom when you are in your older age than you thought you had when you were younger. Now, that's one thing that just comes along with time, and that's called time and wisdom. And you can learn these lessons early, or you can learn them the hard way, or you can learn them late. Either way, there is a lesson in it, but it's not a guarantee that you will learn the lesson. Life can be less stressful when you choose to react even before a situation happens. Like the most elite people choose how they're going to respond when something happens. The problem is that if we don't look at ourselves as elite or we're not aware, we become stressed out and we don't react how we think we should react. Life becomes so much more enjoyable, so much less stressful when you already have a planned response. In the government, we call it disaster response. We know that when a disaster comes or it happens, disasters are inevitable, but we already got a plan on how we're going to respond. And my response when I need help now is real simple. Psalms 121, 1-2, it says, I will lift up my eyes unto the hills from which cometh my help. My help comes from the Lord. And the help that I'm looking for, it's like real time, So I know that anytime that I need help, I can call on the Lord and he's going to answer me. Let me tell you how this played out when I was so stressed out because I went from one therapist to another therapist. The guy that I had he was awesome. When I say he was awesome, I felt like there could be maybe one or two other people who could be better than him, but they're not on this side of the Mississippi. They're not actually in the United States. They're on the other side of the world. But he was so good and helped me out so much, and shout out to you. I won't say his name, of course, but he was so cool. Every time I go in there, he have a new pair, some cool socks on. And he was a graduate of the University of Michigan. That makes him just cool all by himself. You know what I mean? U of M, go blue all day, twice on Saturday. So here I am in this situation. I'm going from one therapist to another. He told me that he was leaving. I don't know if he was retiring or just relocating. But in my mind, he was so rock steady, I just didn't imagine myself going to another person. And I know that could be traumatizing for people when you feel like one person was perfect and you don't think you have what you would call continuity of care. It can kind of like set you back. But remember, my real time go-to is I will look to the hills from which comes my help. My help comes from the Lord. So here I am, going back in my mind with my experience, me thinking I know so much, because in my past life, I was a sexual harassment and assault response prevention coordinator or leader. So I've had situations where you have to get traumatizing information from a subject or a victim or a survivor. We call them survivors now, from a survivor, and they have to go from one person to the next and they have to tell that story again. Then they go from one person to the next and they have to tell that story again. In our world, it's called re-victimizing. In the health world, it's called, I think it's called social re-traumatization. Because you have big corporations or you have big systems that are not personal, and you have to hope that the person that you get won't make you retell your whole story from the beginning or tell you the most traumatizing parts of your story. So me having experienced that, helping other people out, the first thing I said in my head was, man, this is going to be jacked up. They're going to make me tell my story over and then repeat it and then try to go and ask more details. Man, I've already told enough people the same crap over and over. I don't want to start from ground zero. So in my head, I was just negative at that point. And to the point where I just came home and I told my wife, and I was like, man, you remember Mr. Such and Such, the guy, who I go see? Man, this joker about to leave. So now I'm about to get handed over to somebody I don't even know. Man, I don't have to repeat some of the same crap, because in my head, I'm also retiring soon. And I'm thinking like, is this all of my behavioral health records? Are these notes going to be passed on? Are they going to actually read my notes and make me come in and then just ask me, am I comfortable? Like, all of this is going on in my head. And what I did was I went against what I said was my go-to. And my go-to was, I will look to the hills from which comes my help. My help comes from the Lord. I actually said what was going to happen, and I didn't even consult the Lord. And when I did, the first thing that came to mind was, if God is taking care of you, why won't he continue to take care of you? If he did it before, he can do it again. And at that point in my head, I stopped judging, and I gave the person who I didn't know, the person I'm going to run into, I gave them the benefit of the doubt. And I gave myself the benefit of the doubt to do what I call a pattern interrupt. I had to stop thinking a certain way as if I know it all. Just because you know a little something doesn't mean you know it all. But yes, we draw conclusions and we try to do things to make ourselves comfortable, but that's not always the right thing to do. The right thing to do is trust the process. Allow people to be what you need in your life when you need it. You take on extra stress when you try to do it all on your own. When you try to just go back into your memory bank and into your education and in your experience, and you don't allow a great future that's lying ahead of you, you don't allow it to unfold right in front of you. So that was just one thing that I learned during that process, that when there is a changeover, I need to take the same principle and go back to when I need it, when I need the help, it's going to show up. So don't stress myself with things I haven't seen, and don't just go back into my past and make my past experience my future experience. This is crazy because I've seen these patterns with me throughout my life. I'm more comfortable just living in the moment. I would rather deal with chaos when it comes up than to think about living in chaos before it happens. So that's different from training and preparing for situations, because you cannot train yourself for chaos. What you can train yourself for is using principles to move through chaos, using principles to move through anything that's going to happen in life. When you program yourself to respond even before something happens, you are in control. So I know from this point forward that there is no situation that I can't be okay with, even if it's traumatic, even if it's horrible, because I know I'm going to survive. So I don't have to be at that level of thought and worry where I'm worrying myself for no reason, and I'm worrying myself to worry. That's the stupidest thing you can do. But I found myself in that loop. But it was the stupidest thing you can do prior to me understanding that it was the stupidest thing you could do. So now I get straight to the part where I move from one therapist or one counselor to the new one. I was actually sitting in the waiting room to be called in after I signed in for my appointment. And mind you, I did tell you that I talked to my wife, and I told my wife, like, you know what, I need to chill and I need to let God be God. I need to chill and let things just flow. I did that. I got into the waiting room, and guess what? I showed up in the waiting room and a thought popped up telling me to not allow things just unfold. And I shut it down real quick. Your shutdown game got to be strong. You know what I mean? So when these thoughts pop up, you got to take control of these thoughts. You have to say, I don't care what this thought is, but I'm going to take it. I'm going to put this boy in the headlock, and I'm going to conform it to what I know it needs to be. I'm going to take this boy captive. Like, you going to jail even if you don't want to. And you take that boy and you lock it up and you make it just sit there. So I walk into the counselor's office, and the craziest thing in the world happened. Man, he asked me to introduce myself after he kind of told me who he was. And next thing you know, I'm just crying like a baby. And I'm like, what the heck? I almost had an outer body experience where I was like, yo, what are you doing? And this is like, it's like in slow motion, but it's not. It's like it's happening for real. It's like, man, what are you doing? What are you crying about? And I was crying because after he kind of introduced himself and he said what he had to say, I started talking and I told him what I thought was going to happen. And what I thought was going to happen did not happen. But I still had these emotions that I never really experienced. The only other time I experienced crying in front of somebody without a feeling of control was when my first sergeant told me something that I already knew. My father had already died. And I had to call, and I just knew a Red Cross message was coming. When the Red Cross message got to my command, I already knew it was coming because guess what? I'm the one who even called Red Cross. So here I am at work. I walk across this field this is happening when I'm in Hawaii. I go to my first sergeant's office and he says, Sergeant Adams, I got a Red Cross message for you. Do you know what it's about? I said, yes, sir. I said, yes, First Sergeant, I know what it's about. And he proceeded to talk. And while he was talking, I just started crying. I started breaking down. And the thing is, I knew my dad was already gone. But the fact I had to hear it again from somebody else and also hearing it at work, it was a whole different environment. But thanks be to God that the first sergeant was like, hey, you can cry, it happens, you know. And I had to comfort people in the same position. But I've never been on the side where I'm in the chair. I've always had to share news to somebody else, and I've always been the comforter. There are going to come times in your life where you have to be comforted. You're going to have to be okay with just expressing yourself. Crying is a human emotion. Tears are used to wash away sorrow, to wash away pain, to wash away grief, to wash away confusion. And if you don't cry, and if you don't allow yourself to cry in a place that's considered safe for you, you would implode. And trust me, it will spill over into your job. You will blow up on the people you love the most, and you will become somebody you wish you would have never met. And I don't want that for you. So that's why I'm just sharing my moments of PTSD and how I know that I'm better because I actually went to get help. And I have continual help through different, community that I have. Like I say, life is not meant to be lived alone. And you can't live life alone. When you're going to come into the world as a single person, but you're going to leave also as that one single person leaving out of this world. But from the moment that you come into this world, you are surrounded with people. And life is meant to be lived together. We are meant to lean on one another. We are meant to discover how we can be a better help. But you also, being a better help, will sometimes become the person who needs that help. And it's going through those experiences where you really have empathy and you go to a whole nother level. Not where only you're helping people, but you're allowing yourself to be helped. So now you become a better helper. Now, if you have a heart to help, then this is going to be an easy process for you. I'm not saying like every point will be easy, but it's easy because you become aware that this is important. You become aware that this is going to help you help others. And it also allows you to express and feel those feelings. For so long, I didn't allow myself to feel. I think it's just, when you are in an environment where things are to the point and you just got to make things happen, you don't allow yourself to feel. You don't allow yourself to go back and reflect on past events. I'm not saying live in the past. What I'm saying is you be introspective of what's happening now. You get to be a better person to somebody else. But this is the craziest thing in the world. You learn how to become a better person to yourself. Hey, that's a bar. You learn how to become a better person to yourself. What does that mean? That means I have an order in which I love and take care of things. Here's the first thing. I've learned to love God with all of my heart, all of my soul, and all of my strength. And love my neighbor as myself. Now, this is crazy. Now, check out how this works, though. So you love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. So you're using all of the 4 pillars to give to God. Physically, there are things that God requires to express your love for him. He says we lift up our hands. If you're not physically able or you have ailments, you say, yo, I wanted to get this body together so I can lift up my hands. But if I can't do it, I'm going to come to a place where I can do whatever I can to honor God with my body. Mentally, I want to take my thinking, think on those things that are above, that are true, that are just, that are lovely, that are of a good report. You start to think on these things. This is how you love God. And then emotionally, yeah, you that dude who can cheer at a football game and cheer at church. That's emotional. You know what I mean? You're the same guy who can pick up an M16 and shoot down range. And you can be the same guy who comes home and love your life, love your family and your wife with the same intensity. Like, that's emotional. You know, I remember being deployed and listening to music. And it's almost like you getting hype before you go out on the mission because you just want to be aware. You don't want the enemy to get you. So you like, yo, I'm about to get the enemy. Man, I used to hear that one song all the time. Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor. And that will get you hype. And it's almost like, yo, it's going to be you before it's going to be me. But in your mind, you're like, yeah, I got to pick up my weapon and I got to be ready to war. That's emotional. And I can come home and I can throw the football with my son. I can love my wife. I can be as emotional and as expressive. Then I can go to church and do the same thing. I could jump. I could sing. I could dance. That's emotion. I love God like that. So if I can love God like that, then it would translate, I would learn how to love myself like that. And spiritual, you know what I mean? There are spiritual rules and laws that I live by, principles that I live by. And those are the 4 pillars. Now, how does that 4 pillars go to love your neighbor as yourself? It looks like this. Love God, love yourself, take care of yourself. And the way you love yourself and take care of yourself, you can now take care of and love your neighbor. That's the way it works. So when I look at myself, I had to let my pride go. But guess what? Something physically had to happen to me to break me down where my emotions and my thought processes had to get a wake-up call. And when that first sergeant ripped me a brand new one, a lot of the stuff he said was true. I didn't have some things in place as a fail stop. I let my battle buddy down. And not having those 2 things in place, that means that I was of a rank that he expected more, but I was operating like someone who had just came in the Army. How are you going to miss your doggone shift, your 24-hour shift after your buddy's been up for 24 hours? How you just going to miss? Is because guess what? The physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, those things, they weren't intact fully. And mine fell short in the emotional and mental. So just imagine a table with 2 legs and the other 2 legs are short. I can't sit nothing on that table and let it be stable. Something's going to continue to fall off. And because I wasn't actually where I was supposed to be, things started falling off and I got exposed. And that's what made me go get help. And now I know how to love myself. When I say I love myself, I know, hey, when I go to the doctor and they tell me, hey, my blood pressure is this, or I need to lose weight, or I need to actually work out, get more muscle, guess what I do? I do what the doctor says. I just face it. That's because I love myself, because I learned how to love God. I give God my all. Why won't you give yourself your all? So I do those natural things, those physical things. I have a sleep pattern. I make sure that I get rest, because guess what happens? When you don't get rest, your mind goes places that you don't want it to go. I remember I got to a place where, and this was not the best thing, but I learned that I started programming myself that if I don't go to sleep at a certain time, that I said I'm going to have bad thoughts. And I trained myself to think like that. And then it happened. I was like, you know what? Now I got to start over and reprogram my thinking, because guess what? I'm programming bad thoughts or predictive things when that's just not the case. So I just know that I have to be on a certain sleep cycle. The more your body gets rest, the better your body is. The better your mind can function. You can think better. People who make the worst decisions either are drunk or they're drunk with intoxicating things such as lack of sleep. That's why people with PTSD are so irritable, because you know, if on the side where you don't get rest, you're no good for nobody during the day. You're not. So a lot of people use drugs or alcohol to try to drown those things out, and it only masks whatever you're going through for a short period of time. And that's not the way you live. Now, back to the emotional part. I love to enjoy the moment. I'm the type of person that if you're not in my presence, I'm not going to forget about you, but I'm going to enjoy you more when you're in my presence. You know what I mean? That's the type of person I am. And not only that, the emotional part is I've learned that these feelings that we have, feelings of joy, feelings of anger, when I can channel the energy of the anger, I find out why I'm angry, and then I can be more productive while I'm angry to do what I got to do in order to make that anger dissipate, or to use the aggression of the anger for what needs to happen. So if you know you're angry, I know that I'm going to have an adrenaline response. So if I need to protect somebody I love or get busy with these hands, guess what? I want to feel more anger, because guess what? I know that mentally my senses are heightened. So guess what? And I know it's only going to last for a period of time. So I'm about to maximize this anger for my good. And it's crazy how you learn this when you understand that God gave us emotions for a reason, and they're to be used the right way and not used the wrong way. I love everything about this. So on the other thing is spiritual, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. I read what I believe is the truth. And then it says, how can a young man cleanse his way? What is the truth? Thy word is truth. So the more that I've found myself reading, and I say this often, I was a good soldier. I was a really good soldier. It's not like pat myself on the back. I was a really good soldier because I was a good son of God, a good believer. I'm a good man of God because I learned those spiritual things apply to natural things. And then I learned so many things about warfare and about interpersonal communication because I was a good soldier. I learned, people think, how can I say it like this? Not saying it with the ounce of arrogance. I'll say it again. I was a good soldier because I was a good Christian. And I'm a good Christian because I was a good soldier. I learned the natural things of warfare apply to spiritual things. I learned that the spiritual things of warfare apply to the natural things. This is crazy. You can find peace on the other side of PTSD. You can find peace on the other side of PTSD, believe it or not. Now, last thing, I'm going to close with this. These are my order of things, and I'm just sharing my experience. Everybody got their own. The last thing is I can love my neighbor as myself. When I know, and I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, that I've properly loved myself, it's easy to extend that to another person because guess what? I've experienced it and I get knowledge from that experience. And it's simple. It's just like that. People tell me that I'm a great helper. I know I'm a great helper. That's not saying it with arrogance. This is called the Launchpad because guess what? I've launched people out in life because I care. I've helped people because I care. That's not arrogance. That's strength and awareness. That's what it is. And I love helping people. But the place where I fell short was I did not allow anyone to help me until I found out that one of the legs on my table, the 4 legs, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, one of the legs, it wasn't even. It was loose and things just started to fall apart for me. It fell off. But that's what the Launchpad is about. Now you have an opportunity to analyze and hear part of my story. You can tell me what my strength is. I think I know my strength from my angle, but you can tell me I have a different strength because you're looking at me from another angle. And that's the beauty of community. And my assignment, I know what my assignment is. My assignment is to launch people out into life. And I will launch people out into life by sharing, by getting people who know more than what I know and sharing and connecting people and teaching people. I know my purpose. My purpose is multifaceted. I have one goal and one purpose in life, and that's to give glory to God. But there are other purposes that I feel while I'm here. And that's why the Launchpad is here, to launch people out in their life, to encourage people, to let them stay in flight and give them the strength to launch somebody else out. With that being said, I'm just going to close it out by saying, I appreciate you all. If you stay with me the whole time, with me processing and sharing, I want you to put comments below on what was most helpful for you. Put comments below on how you've helped someone else. Hit the forward or the share button. Share it with somebody else. And you can also leave a comment on what other topic do you want me to share. Whether I share from my life experience or someone else's life experience, the idea is for you to be launched out in life and for us to all share in this thing called community and enjoy each other as we grow. Life is an experience of moments that happen. It's not just one big thing. There are small moments that happen all throughout life. And those things, once you take it and put it all together, you should be able to be in flight. And that's my goal. My goal is to share, and share. I'm definitely going to teach along the way because that's what I do. That's what I do. And I'm proud to do it. I'm excited to do it. And that's what I'll do. So that is a wrap to today's podcast. And I want you to know that there's peace on the other side of PTSD. Peace.